I worked with the other commissioners and with our county clerk to secure $111,000 in funding for RV hookups and a sanitary dump station at Archer. This was part of the Archer Complex master plan for the fairgrounds. I worked with Visit Cheyenne to install the Tom Horn booth, and I worked extensively on industrial siting in the legislature. I've been working on that for several years. Industrial siting includes things like wind and power applications, the natural gas power plant. Currently, if we were to have one of those projects go in today under the old rules, we would have received no impact fees. I'm out of time, thank you.
Kevin, before you start, since I know that's not a fair question for you, I'm going to modify it slightly, if that's okay. You talk about your accomplishments in the last 4 years.
Okay, my accomplishments in the last 4 years is, there's quite a bit of them. Number one, I decided to run for county commissioner. That's probably the biggest accomplishment I've had. Raising my daughter she's 5, she's about to start kindergarten. Those are some of my bigger accomplishments.
All right, Emily, we'll start with you. I'm going to reword this one slightly. What is Agenda 21 and how do you feel about it?
I have no idea.
I knew you wouldn't.
Agenda 21 was signed in by the former Bush president, and this is a UN agenda to making our country go green. It is tied in with MAP 21 funding. That's what we get for Plan Cheyenne. It is regulations keep taking control of just about every aspect of our lives here in the United States of America. And you have to be one that's willing to open your eyes and take a look at this, that it's unfolding right before you with the EPA war on coal, the EPA war on our water, the Obamacare taking over our healthcare department. I'm telling you, this is an unelected bureaucracy working through the EPA that is definitely will make its way down to the local governments. You're not going to see a combine run down our streets with flashing lights with Agenda 21 on it. But I have on my recording on my phone, I went out to a planning meeting out to our public works, and Clarion called in and I recorded this meeting. There was no elected officials there. Their goal is to get rid of local government. Their goal is to go to regional type governments where you would have to go clear to Boulder to get a permit. You've got Plan Boulder, Plan Fort Collins, Plan Cheyenne, and Plan Casper. That's why I'm avid, wanting to get rid of the MPO and Plan Cheyenne, because it's tied in with Agenda 21. And during this meeting, they mentioned the word MAP 21 funding 4 times. They talked about freight movement and truck transportation movement. Now, what does a planning department have anything to do with that? It's time to open our eyes, get on that computer, and open it up and study. I remember a gentleman that's sitting in this room tried to hand some information to a county commissioner that was running in 2014, and it was knocked out of his hand. Those that got to stop him have got to hold it.
Good job. Thank you.
So I have actually read the Agenda 21 document. I've read Glenn Beck's book. I don't actually remember the title off the top of my head, but it was basically where they segregated people into camps. They had them walking on treadmills to power, and everything was regulated. It was kind of like, I always kind of compare it to the Hunger Games, because some of the things are really similar if you've read both books. And then I received a book from Al Simpson on the Green Agenda, and I read that as well. Though not the former politician Al Simpson, the local Al Simpson gave me the book. So I read that as well. You know, Agenda 21 contains several principles which a group of people sat down in a room and decided that's what they would like the nation and the world as a whole to strive for. I think sometimes in the debates about what the future of the United States looks like, we tend to forget that it contains some other things that are good. So it also talks about ending human trafficking. It talks about encouraging primary education. It talks about encouraging women to breastfeed. It talks about things like ending child labor. And so I think what we have to do is we have to be really careful about separating the agenda with Agenda 21 and separating the concepts that are valid concepts. And I think sometimes the two get intertwined, because I think having women breastfeed their children is a good thing. I think stopping human trafficking is a good thing. I think ending child labor is a good thing. So I think you have to make a distinction there between the agenda and some of the policies.
Thank you.
I received a few emails recently asking me about Agenda 21, and to be honest with you, I had heard of the topic before, but I didn't really understand it, and so as of now, I'm still researching the topic, so I really can't offer you any of my insight on Agenda 21.
I also have read the Agenda 21. It was started back in 1971, kind of as an offshoot of the UN. Then they had a big meeting in 1991, I believe it was, in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and they talked about it. Al Gore is a big proponent of it. Most of the greenies, the environmentalists, are part of this movement. And I think Agenda 21 is probably an offshoot of the 40 years of liberal indoctrination that have gone on in our educational system, and also to a certain extent in our government system. We've had 40 years of since FDR came in, and I guess you can actually trace it back further than that. And the Agenda 21 is basically it wants to go to a one world government, and they're going to level the playing field because they think the United States has used too many resources for our population, and instead of bringing them up to our standard of living, they want to take us down to their standard of living. I'm not sure how successful it's going to be. I think one good example of how it's coming apart is that England got out of the European Union, and the European Union was actually an offshoot of some of the ideas that came out of Agenda 21. And I think whether you want to call it Agenda 21 or you want to call it liberalism, I think that we just have to watch out for it. And whenever we think it's sneaking up on us, we need to try and slap it back as best we can. Thank you.
We'll start with Amber this time. Amber, what are your top three priorities if re-elected, and why?
So the first thing I think that we need to focus on is balancing our savings and investment. And I think that it's really important to recognize that invariably what happens in Wyoming, because we're so dependent upon minerals, minerals make up such a huge component of the state budget, that every time that industry swings, it sends our economy into a swing. And so I think it's kind of, they refer to it as the three-legged stool concept, and we put all of our weight on one leg of the stool instead of balancing our stool. And so I think that we really need to focus on diversifying our economy, making sure that we have three legs to stand on, so that when one leg gets kicked out, we still have two legs on which to ride on. And that way people aren't constantly being thrown into this fluctuation in which we're strong enough that when the state's in that fluctuation, we're not being pulled down with them. I think that we need to address some of the impacts. Typically growth is thought of as a good thing and a positive thing, but with growth also comes impacts. We see some of those impacts when we talk about the 6-penny ballot in terms of the jail expansion, the courtroom remodel. Those types of things are due to growth. And so with growth comes cost. And so it's things like encouraging infill development, which is in areas where you don't have development. We've got a project by Woods Landing right now, right before us, which would be an infill type development that we already provide services to. So we're already plowing roads, we've already got emergency services there. It's not costing us more, but it's generating additional revenue to offset some of the cost of growth. And finally, I think that we need to continue to be conservative during this time and ensure that we are responsible with the taxpayers' money and that they are getting the most bang for their buck.
My number one priority, if elected, would hands down be the people and the employees of Laramie County. I feel that that's my number one job, if elected as a county commissioner. Another priority would be the budget. I think that the budget needs to always be sensible, well-maintained. At the same time, I think you have to find room to cut away some of the fat on the budget, so you do have room for other projects as well as never compromising employees. My third priority would be the investment in our youth and our community as a whole. I think that obviously the youth are going to be the future of Laramie County, and we want to make sure that as many of them remain here in Laramie County as possible. Also would like to keep as much tax revenue in Laramie County as possible instead of it going over the border. So I think that's going to, it's going to have to be, there's going to have to be some projects put in to do that. And that goes back into managing the budget, trying to trim some of the fat to make sure that we can provide these projects and these amenities that keep people in Laramie County and attract families to Laramie County and bring new businesses to Laramie County.
I think the question was what three priorities? I think probably my first priority is to continue to have Laramie County a good place to live and work, and to have people get along with one another, and so we don't have those things that are happening in the big cities, that we respect law and order, and we respect private property, and we respect other people. And I think that's one of the priorities that I have as far as being in government, that we do that. Another thing is to continue to try and have conservatively budgeted government and try and provide for the wants of Laramie County, or the needs of Laramie County, excuse me, not the wants. And not everybody's wants can be done by government. I think we need to also try and let our citizens know that there's a difference between what we can afford and our needs and what some people's wants are. I think the other thing is, I think we're going to continue to have a declining revenue from the state, so we're going to have to figure out how to work around that. And also, we've got an aging infrastructure in Laramie County. I think that's evident by the amount of complaints we get about the roads. We could double the road budget, and it'd still take 10 years to get them up to where they would be recommended by the so-called experts. And that's not just in the roads, but we also have buildings that are getting older. We had to put $400,000 into the heating and air conditioning water system over at the jail this year. The jail's 20 years old. It's supposed to have another lifespan of another 50 years. So we're going to have to continue to maintain the infrastructure that we've got and see how we can do that best. Thank you.
Safety for our county is top of the line. First response, fire, sheriff's department, our roads. We've got to start stockpiling more high quality material. And I believe that we need to start looking at going to the private sector to do some of the work to get our roads repaired if they can do it more efficient and better with some solid contracts. Probably the number one issue, if we don't tackle this 500-pound gorilla in the room, and that's protecting our oil, gas, mining, and the EPA war on coal. The Wyoming County Commissioners Association needs to come together, all 23 counties. Laramie County's in good shape, 38 million, got over 10 million in reserves. We're better off than some counties. Some of these counties are really hurting. And if you don't fix this 500-pound gorilla, there is no money for nothing else. We need to come together, the Wyoming County Commissioners Association, come up with a constitutional amendment and defund these regulations where the state pays nothing. It is a state issue. but the county commissioners can send a strong support bill to the legislators and give them the leadership that we have in every county to support that bill. Probably a second one would be getting Orchard, the fair out to Orchard by selling some of that property I mentioned earlier. Again, I think the roads are probably top of the line here, but communicating also with our citizens and offering them a chance at our town hall meetings or wherever we can, open dialogue with them to come up with plans that they would like to see Laramie County do. The communication with our public has to increase, not decrease, and you will get that with this commissioner. Thanks.
All right, Kevin, this time we'll start with you. County spending is just right, not enough, too much, and why?
I think the county spending right now is just about right, based on the declining sales tax and everything like that. Obviously, it'd be nice to be able to have more money to spend, but we don't have that luxury right now, so I think the spending is just about spot on.
Was there another part of that too?
It's just too much, not enough, or just
Okay.
right, or in
Yep,
one?
no, I feel that it's just right.
I think it depends on your perspective. If your road's not in good shape, it's not enough. But I want to also let you know that from a commissioner's standpoint, we have 1,000 miles of road to worry about, not just the 2 miles that you have to travel to get to the asphalt. So we have to do the best we can. I guess I would say that probably county spending is just right now because we're able to meet the needs of the community. We're able to keep our infrastructure from falling apart, and that we're able to provide the services, the health, safety, and welfare for the community. So I think, and we are able to slowly to expand and make some inroads on some of the amenities that people are requesting now. You don't get people moving into a community anymore unless they have some of the amenities that some of us older people think were kind of superfluous 30, 40 years ago. So we have to realize that if we're going to have the youth come and stay in this community, that we're going to have to do some more investment in this community. And I hope we can do that, or I intend to, if I'm elected, I intend to do that without raising taxes.
I think government's always too big. It's never the answer. It's usually the problem. I think there's all kinds of areas that you can cut money in. I remember a $20,000 facilitator was hired for the water meetings. That's for 18 hours of work was on our docket there to pass. That's $1,100 per hour. Give me a break, guys. Not even a good attorney's worth that. You have to look for opportunities to save the taxpayers money. This commissioner did that when he was in there for 2 years, and I will continue to do that. I think Laramie County's a lot better shape than most counties, but we also need to be fiscal conservatives because we do not know, hopefully, that we have a Republican president and not who the Democrats are pushing to bankrupt our coal companies. We need fiscal conservatives in every office, and you have to have them that have a voting record to start looking for ways to save the taxpayers' money. And if it means less studies, and we do a little research on our own and do our job facilitating these meetings, and that's the way it's got to be.
So as a commissioner, I think we actually do a very good job with our budget. I think it says a lot when you look at the fact that during the economic downswing across the state, that we have been able to absorb the cuts and losses from the state. We haven't been faced with cutting any employees. We have actually been able to, the state cut all of our consensus funding. The state cut $67,000 from our child support payment program. In addition, the state cut 20% from the DUI drug court. The state has also made significant cuts to city county health. And during this time of cuts, Unlike the city, we don't have to go into reserves to fund things like the city has funded pay raises out of reserves. We don't have to do those types of things. As a commission, we have been extremely careful in ensuring that even last year when we were experiencing all of the influx from the minerals, oil and gas development here in Laramie County, this year going into it, we anticipated and correctly adjusted for the downswing in sales tax so that we were not short in our budget, that we were able to cover all of our expenses. This year we are continuing to evaluate those, and we're anticipating even a little bit more of a decline, and we have made those adjustments in our budget. We have been fortunate in that the property sales tax local assessed values were up 8% this year. And part of that has to do with the growth we've experienced in the county, and that offsets some of our losses. But we certainly do not have to do any layoffs or any of that to go into reserves to fund our day-to-day operations. And for those reasons, I think that means that we have been just right.
Okay, thank you. I think the mic has to come back down here. Is that right, or did I get it wrong? No, I think so. All right, Buck, I'll start with you on this one. With the legislature coming back in February, it looks like more budget cuts are probably looming. How do we prioritize what we save in Laramie County and what we have to let go?
Well, first of all, we can speculate. We know that there are probably going to be some budget cuts. I think what we have to do is, in Laramie County, to a certain extent, we've already got our budget for fiscal 16-17. That are pretty well done with it. We will approve it finally here in the next few weeks. And so the legislature, whatever their cuts are, will affect us in the budget 17-18. So I think we need to work with the legislature this term and work with them and try and have them make whatever cuts they make affect the programs least that are most important to the counties, and also not to send us any unfunded mandates. One of the things that was cut or attempted to be cut was the ankle bracelets for the juveniles. That gave the judge the opportunity to either you have a juvenile that really you didn't want to send home without any supervision, or you didn't think he belonged in jail, and they cut the ankle bracelets so that they would cost about $30 a day, and you put him in jail cost about $200 a day. So I worked in conjunction with the County Commissioners Association and with Dr. Corsi. We were able to get them to get funding for another year for those. So I think we need to take it on a line by line and see what happens. And I think we've all decided that at the commissioner level that we're probably going to have some more state cuts, but we need to work with them and see that they do the least harm possible to the county. Thank you.
You know, when you're in the plentiful years, you may consider personnel costs and higher healthcare costs. When it comes to reducing the size of government in an economic downturn, and I asked the mayor this question, it was on your radio program, what would be the top priorities that you would use to cut an 8% out of your budget? He said it's personnel costs. When we watch the commissioners pass elected officials getting a 20% increase in pay over the next 4 years, that is not much looking toward the future to say that we could be facing an economic downturn. Higher healthcare costs comes when they drive out a healthcare business, Win Health, and plus it was 8 months after I warned them we could have an economic downturn. I seen it on our dais. We had an $80,000 increase in health insurance, even with Win Health. So you have to have fiscal conservatives that'll look at this in the long term. Do we have a sustainable budget when it comes to personnel costs? We love our employees, they're great employees, and they deserve a cost of living raise. But elected officials getting a 20% increase in pay, that's something I voted no then, and I will vote no in the future.
Could you read me the question again?
sure with, I'm gonna shorten it probably, but with expected budget cuts coming in the next legislative session, how you prioritize what we keep in Laramie County and what we have to let go?
So I think one is that the commission is anticipating that there will be additional budget cuts. And so when we look at our over-the-cap funding, we're anticipating that come next year, the legislature is probably going to try and pull more of that back. And so part of that is having conversations with the legislature throughout the year, not just during legislative session, so that you know where they're at, what's going on. I think another important thing, one of the things that I've done is I've gone up and listened to things like the Craig report at the legislature, so that I'm getting the same information that they're getting, so that when I am evaluating things like the budget, I have that information to be able to make those decisions. You know, as we go into, if we wind up going into a situation where we have to make cuts, you know, one, I think we need to look to state statute to determine, you know, what are our statutory obligations. And one of the interesting conversations I have with people, which is always surprising to them, is that there is no statutory requirement to maintain roads. And that's why the county is not required to take on roads in new neighborhoods. And so I think inevitably what happens is people say, we want you to cut, but then when it comes down to things and when we really start paring it down to what are our statutory obligations, we have an obligation for the clerk's office, we have an obligation for the jail, we have an obligation for the assessor's office, you know, we have obligations to provide various services. Statutorily, we're required to maintain the buildings, but there's no statutory requirement to maintain the roads. And yet, the number one complaint I get as a commissioner is the roads. And so I think when people start going out and they start saying, you need to cut, well, if we go back to the statutory requirements, I think inevitably what will happen is that people won't like where we cut.
I think if you're gonna have to make cuts, there has to be some fat from the budget that can be removed. Once that's removed, obviously I don't feel that you can cut public safety, and I don't feel that you can cut critical infrastructure. With those two being cut, you're never going to bring any new businesses, any new families to Laramie County. So I think you just have to really take a look at what cuts are going to do the least amount of damage and not affect your employees or the people of Laramie County that much, and unfortunately make those cuts. But like I said earlier, it's if you want to, at the same time, the county needs to spend money in order to make money. If you want to increase sales tax revenue, then you're going to have to spend a little money to get some of that money remaining in Laramie County.